Who here is struggling, still struggling to balance things, trying to figure out who are you? People, who here has trouble when someone asks you the question, what do you do for fun? Anyone? You're like, I don't know, like what's fun? That doesn't involve research. Yeah, that took me a while to figure that one out too. I love work-life issues, and it wasn't always that case. If you were to look at me 5 years ago, I was working at a small college in the Midwest. I had one of those lovely slash positions. You know, I was an assistant football coach, slash assistant director of residence life, slash judicial affairs coordinator, slash intramurals coordinator, slash new husband, slash family member, slash motivational speaker. I think it ends there because my memory doesn't go that far back. Life was stressful. And on top of that, I had a work environment that was not exactly the most conducive to my health. Have you ever had a bad boss? Ever had a boss that said one thing, expected the other? Ever had the boss's boss who was worse than your boss? That was my life. Every single decision I made, every single thing I did was put under the microscope. And on top of that, I said I was the assistant director of residence life. That meant I lived where I worked, which, aside from having no traffic, literally, this was my apartment door, this was my office door. I could, back then, do the splits from one door to the other. It was great. Commute was fantastic. But when you live where you work, the boundaries between personal life, professional life, and everything else in between gets blurred. I'd go out to my weekly karate lesson, and students would be stopping me, or they'd be watching me in my outfit and like pointing and laughing, or I'm self-conscious. Man, I thought they were pointing and laughing, or thinking they could take the RD or something like that. You know, I'd be on weekends just walking around campus with my wife, just enjoying the weekend, and admissions counselors would pull me in. Hey, can you open up a room for me? Can you do this? Can you do that? And there was never any separation. And what happened to me is what happens to a lot of people when we get stressed out. I got sick. Started getting anxiety. Started getting other related illnesses. I started becoming paranoid. I felt like there was no way out. Then I decided to apply to a doctoral program, because I thought that would cure all my stress issues. I got to Michigan State, and it was actually really cool. I remember getting the email that I was in. I was sitting in my office, nice big office, got the oak desk and the leather chair. It was actually pretty sweet deal. But the only good thing about working there. And I got this email pops up and says, "Congratulations, you've been accepted to Michigan State." And it was awesome. The opera music was playing in the background. I had like tears in my eyes, like, freedom. It said, you also have no funding. But I decided, yeah, what's that? Sort of freedom. Well, I decided to take the plunge anyway, because I believed in what I was studying at the time. And at the time, my interest was athletics. I wanted to study athletic finance, and I realized I was too close to the research topic. I loved it too much to actually be objective about anything I studied. And I realized after a while what I was really interested in were employee issues, work-life issues. And I found this thing called work-life balance, and really work-life boundaries, which is what we're going to talk about here today. And I started to apply it to student affairs administrators, to find folks who put on programs like this today, and why it was important to them, because in this profession, within 5 years, almost 50 to 60% of the people that get into it get out. Now, you can give me any argument in the world, but when you're losing over half your workforce in that short a time, that's a personnel problem. And on top of that, the reasons were people were being stressed. They were burnt out. They were feeling hopeless. They couldn't move anywhere. And so I remember one day I'm sitting in my seminar room, and we're going around the table, and this is about third year, so we're now a little bit more mature in our academic thinking. And I said, I'm going to study work-life balance and student affairs. And this was the reaction I got. Uncontrollable laughter. Yes, you would have thought I was Rodney Dangerfield, Chris Rock, pick your favorite comedian. I had to wait. It's the best laugh I've ever gotten. They went on. And all the quips back and forth, there is no work life, I work 60 hours, blah, 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 blah. And I'm getting, the first 2 seconds were kind of cute. By minute 3, I'm getting a little annoyed. I got to settle down the crowd to actually get into the things I actually specifically want to study. And I realized, well, we have a problem here then. And I started talking to some of my friends in the corporate world, and they recognized that work life was also an issue. And to some of them, it definitely wasn't as funny, but they had accepted some of the realities of their situation. But as I got into the literature and the things I'm going to share with you today, tell you that there are other ways out. There are things you can do. And the key to it is you have to be your own advocate. You have to advocate for yourself. Theme here is be, know, do. You have to be your own agent. You have to be educated about these types of things. And you have to make choices that are best for you. And it's not always easy, and sometimes it's a long-term strategy, but that's what you got to do. Kind of feel like that, right? We got like one strand left. Because there's a bunch of things, like we talked about in the introduction, that really pull at us in all different directions until the point where maybe we feel like we're going to snap, right? We got to worry about the job market. Right? Got to get a job. What are you going to do with your degree, right? Who gets that question and hates it? You know, even if you know, you got to worry about paying the bills. All right, family commitments, whatever that looks like, could be a partner, could be parents, it could be whoever. Of course, academics. Yeah, that's somewhere in there, right? So we have all these things. So what I want you to do now is I want you to turn to a partner. Anyone, doesn't matter, all at your table, obviously. And I want you just to talk about what are some of the things that are stressing you out or concern you in your work-life issue. What are the things you're struggling with? And we'll take about 1 minute and we'll come back to a group discussion. What are some of the things that came up in our discussions? Just shout them out. What are some issues? Making time for family. Sticking to your routines.
I think similar to the exercise we did at lunch, those kind of 5 circles.
Okay. Okay. Good. So balancing the time. Anything else? One more. Say it again. Gotcha. More efficiency. Got it. I said it in 2 words. That's efficient. All right. So you're going to get you're going to have what I call your work-life toolbox, 4 tools that are going to help you today. You've exhibited a mini version, because I'm not a therapist, of the first one, vent. Seriously. But here's the thing. You got to have someone to vent to who's not part of your day-to-day life. When I was talking about that toxic Midwestern college I was working at, the people I vented to for the longest time were my coworkers. And that just breeds more negativity, or just people can't see beyond the institution as we get focused. So when I get stressed out about my doctoral program, I don't go vent to my fellow classmates, my colleagues. I vent to my mother or my brother, who have absolutely no idea what I do anyway. So it's great. But the thing is, if you're being whiny or whatever the situation is, because they're removed, they can actually be more objective. So if you don't vent, make sure you do, whatever that looks like. I know this is like the no-brainer, like, well, duh, of course. But sometimes we don't. We get so focused on things that are eating at us, we forget to actually go out and seek help, whatever that is, whether it's a friend, if you feel you need a counselor, whatever it is, go talk to someone. All right. So like I said, I'm not going to get into this. This is a situation that I came upon in student affairs. Like I said, 40 to 50%, 60% turnover in the field. People are burning out, feeling stressed. And most important, any Jersey Shore fans, anyone? No. I'm the only one. That's like my secret, like I shouldn't admit that. I should take that slide down. But fist pump. Okay. But the thing is, the themes, aside from the turnover rate, are the exact same in business literature. They're the exact same through HR. People are feeling burnt out. People are working more than 40 hours. Even with their hourly, they're sometimes putting in extra hours they're not even getting paid for. 20 hours a week. Sound familiar? Quote unquote sometimes. Okay, so we have all these work arrangements that aren't being honored and putting more weight on our plate. So here are some generic themes in the literature. Okay, institutional culture is huge. Where you work and where you associate with is huge in terms of you trying to balance your work and your life. Again, it seems like a no-brainer, but whenever we interview for a job, do we actually take that into account? How much do we actually analyze that when we go somewhere and you're like, I got into MSU, I'm going. I knew nothing of the culture here. I lucked out that for the most part, it's actually had a very good work-life culture, but I didn't know. And every job I took before that was the same thing. Oh, the people are so nice. It's a pretty campus. It's a great city. I never really thought to look for work-life cues. Why is that important? Because some jobs, and you can get this if you ask enough questions in a job interview, are extremely ambiguous, or if you even look at the job description sometimes. And job ambiguity is one of the leading causes to burnout stress because you don't know what you're supposed to do, which means you could do something really well and get no credit for it, or do something badly and get slammed for it, or do something well and still get slammed for it because things are ambiguous. And so that's one of the leading causes of people burning out, not being able to balance themselves. So if things are ambiguous in your life, you need to start asking for clarification. Managers, we'll talk about them in a second, but essentially, managers are the key to everything. Okay? Good manager equals you're happier, means you're going to stay longer, it means you can negotiate for some of the things we talked about. Bad manager, not so much, and sometimes beyond the manager, again, the culture or the boss's boss. But there's someone in the management system that is the key to whether you're going to be able to manage this or not. And it's also a good indicator of whether long-term you need to be in that organization, in that situation. All right, burnout, job creep, family creep. Okay, job creep is simply when your work life creeps into your family life and starts to take away from it. So when everything you're doing is based on your academics or your job or whatever, and you got no time for a personal thing, that's job creep. Family creep's the complete opposite. It's actually becoming more and more prevalent, especially in the corporate world, is when family issues creep over into our performance at work and school. And that happens too. I remember being in my third year of college. I guess I was a junior. I'm from Canada, so we just number the years. But third year, my grandfather passed away. I had a lot of family creep going into my academic life that year. I mean, I just was not as productive, all right? Same thing. All right, lack of mobility, boundary theory, alternative work arrangement. Okay, I'm going to talk about these in the next slide. So let's talk about mobility. If you feel that where you're at has no way up or out, that's potentially a problem. Now, I mean that both on an organizational level. So I know, does anyone here work full-time? So, okay. So this is going to resonate, right? You might even love your job where you're at. Have you ever been in a job interview and people ask you, well, where do you see yourself in 3 to 5 years? And I got to the point where I start firing back, well, what kind of job is this? Because if it's a 1 to 2 year job, my answer is going to be different. Because if you don't have a place to move up or out, then the chances are people are going to kind of disengage, they're going to check out. And we don't want that. Now, when things are toxic, that's bad because now you really see there's no light at the end of the tunnel. So it's all about mobility. Is your current situation, does it have mobility? What kind of mobility does it have? Think about those kind of questions. Reduced load, okay? Reduced load professionally just means I'm going to go from 40 hours a week down to 30. But reduced load, I think, within a leadership context also means I'm going to be on maybe 2 community associations instead of 4. It means maybe taking less classes. Whatever it is, the strategy behind reduced load and improving your work life is to say at some point, I can't do 16 things at once. Well, I'm going to pare it down to 12. Okay, I'm not unrealistic. You're not going to get it down to 2. And we'll do an exercise later that sort of helps you manage your time. But that's what I want you to know about reduced load. This is ultimately, I think, what we want. We want flexibility, right? Most of us. Or at least we want the freedom to choose whatever it is that looks like for us. And we'll get into boundary, but we want that. Some people love flexibility in the job place. Some people would rather just go 9 to 5, and that's okay. I think ultimately, at the end of the day, we want a situation that fits with what we want. If we don't have that, it hurts us. Again, managers are the key to your work-life situation. Okay, there's almost very few laws that actually protect your rights as an employee. So essentially, you're an at-will employee in most employment arrangements, right? So take that in mind, which means that the way most company policies are worded and created means that the manager is the one who, on a one-to-one level, will arrange your work-life situation, which means they have the power to say yes to one person and no to another. And so it's important to advocate with them and to engage with them in these conversations because realistically, if you don't, nobody will. Realistically, even if there is a policy that says, you know what, you can do this from home, or you can take 2 months off and we'll cover your tuition, whatever that policy is, they might not know about it, they might not know how to implement it. You're the one that has to go up and make them the gatekeepers. And the great thing is when you have a good relationship with a manager, supervisor, advisor, then that's beautiful because then it just becomes easier. But when you don't, you have to be the one that goes off and do that. Give you an example. I had a colleague had a child, and under U.S. law, you get 6 weeks. FMLA holds that. Okay. There's something in FMLA also called intermittent leave, which means you don't have to take your entire 12 weeks all at once. You can do it bits and pieces. You can do like an hour this week, 3 hours next week. Her company, her manager, never heard of this before. They didn't have an HR specialist either at the job, which tells you something about their commitment to work life. But I told her, this is what you got to advocate for. This is what you got to do. And she did. And she wanted to come back. Her thing was she wanted to come back to work for 3 months, part-time. So she just wanted to sort of extend it out. They agreed to 2 weeks. Yeah. And she was upset. But the point I made to her is, you might not like that it's only 2 weeks instead of 3 months. I mean, clearly you didn't get your objective, but you've moved the ball forward. Because by you advocating for it, people are seeing you there half a day at work and going home and start asking questions, and that's going to start moving the ball forward. That's going to make it easier the next time, because this is not going to be her first. It was her first child. She wants to have another one. It makes the conversation easier the second, third time around if you're still at that organization. Hashtag create your plate if you're into Twitter. So why the heck do I call this thing from the scale to the plate? This is what I hate. Work-life balance is often called work-life balance. We think of this scale thing, right? There's work and there's life, and we always have to bring it sort of 50-50. Well, that's usually not realistic for most of us. It's not even that's not realistic. It's not what all of us want. My father ran his own business his entire life. He would never be 50-50. I was lucky if he was 70% work, 30% family. That's what motivated him. That's what got him out of bed every morning. So I hate this analogy. Or this, so then, the other scales, you think about how much weight you have on your shoulders. That's not bad. That's a better analogy, right? How much weight we can take. But I like plates, all right? Because we have all sorts of plates, right? Because every work situation is different. Well, a lot of different plates. You got your standard circular one, all right? Got some square action going on. Anyone been to Bed Bath? I don't know what that is, but it's kind of trendy, all right? Triangle-ish kind of plate, okay? So we've got these different shapes because we all sort of have our own boundaries and borders, right? So that's what that represents. What else we got here? We got some plates are, geometric shapes, and they got some patterns in it if you like that kind of thing. Now, some plates have compartments. Some plates have many compartments, just like our lives. And sometimes the food fits perfectly into those compartments. And it's a beautiful thing if that's what we want. And some of us, we don't care. We just slop it on the plate. Just give it to you. I don't even know. 10 compartments, 6 compartments, I don't care. Work, life, family, taekwondo. Just give me the fried rice and chicken. But I like the plate analogy because ultimately we're the ones that create our own plates. We have to be the ones that do it. Because if we don't, what you get is someone who wants it to look like that and a boss who does this. That's where the conflict comes in. Or someone who lives their life like this and someone tries to do that to them. If you're like all over the place, you like to integrate everything, we'll get into integration in a second, that will drive you nuts if someone tries to put you in a box. I know I personally will explode. That's where the issues come in. So it's not so much about this. It's more about how do we create the plate? What do we want it to look like? How many compartments do we want it to have? And what do we want to put in those compartments? And how much? The choice is ours. So who creates our boundaries? Who do you think creates our boundaries? We do, thank you. We're watching the old Dr. Phil show. The only thing I learned from Dr. Phil was you teach people how to treat you. That's the only thing and it used to drive me crazy. It seemed like every episode he said that. Then I thought about it. It's true, right? You give off certain things. You permit certain things. And so ultimately, just like that, we create our own boundaries in life. Bonus material. If you want to read a really good book on work life, CEO of me, Dr. Alan Kosick, was here at MSU for many years, now at Purdue. Boo. Okay. Great book. Fairly easy read. Talks a lot about what I'm doing. She's actually the one that introduced me to all this stuff. So available at all Amazon bookshops and all that other sort of fun stuff. All right, so let's talk about boundaries. There are 3 types of boundary styles. We've all taken like the Myers-Briggs or something like that, DISC, True Colors, whatever, okay? Boundaries has a similar thing. There's 3 different boundary styles. First, we have their integrators. Integrators like that big old sloppy buffet plate, right? They say work, life, everything else. Let's just mesh it all together. And I'm going to pick and choose things as I need them, and I'm okay with that. As long as I have the freedom to go from work to family to cleaning the house, whatever it is, as long as I have that freedom, relatively simply, I love my life. You will get the most out of me. Integrators can work at 9 p.m. on a Friday. It doesn't bother them, and they'll be back on Saturday morning, 8 a.m. If they know that maybe Tuesday they have to go meet their uncle in town or something's going on. Integrators love that lifestyle. Excuse me. Separators, complete opposite, don't have to say much. They like 9 to 5. Or they just like, they don't necessarily have to be 9 to 5. They don't mind 8 to 10, 3 to 7, whatever that arrangement is. But everything has its own proper compartment. Everything has its own proper place. And if it doesn't, that's when things get crazy. The separators are the ones that have issues when last minute things come up. And they bleed into other things in their life. That can be an issue. Even if they understand why it's happening, they're still going to have some sort of turmoil over it. So if you're in a very integrated type of work environment that's like that, that's going to be tough for a separator. Separator probably not great for the IT business. They're there for many hours, and things just sort of pop up. If you're working at Google, you're just kind of living there, right? So it's hard to separate work and life because work is life. Then there's the volleyers. My thesis is that most people fall into this. Volleyers, pretty much, they go with the flow. So they recognize that there are times where it is going to be 9 to 5 and it's going to be very scheduled, but there are certain times a year or certain events that will require more shift in family or in work or in other aspects of their life, and they're okay to do that. And they're okay to shift back and forth. Another word for them is cyclers, and they'll just cycle through things. And to me, it's the method of the madness. They need to know sort of to some degree what's going on. There is that give and take, but they can shift back and forth as long as they have some knowledge about that and feel that things are in their best interest. So those are your three. Your integrators, your separators, and your volleyers. Sorry. Second toolbox toy or tool. All right, know your boundary style. But Paul, how do I know my boundary style? We're going to take a test. Because that's what we do here. Moving on. So quite often we're asked our goals, right? You got this today to some degree. What are your goals? What are your goals? When it comes to work-life balance, if there's one question you're going to answer, if you get nothing else, it's not what is your goal. It's what life do you want to live? What do you want your life to look like 5, 10 years down the road? Goals are part of that. But if your goal is to become the CEO of Johnson Corporation, but you really value spending a lot of time with your family, and to climb the corporate ladder may not be what you want, you're gonna get a conflict. What's the life you want to live? Does it involve a lot of flexibility? Is it more scheduled? There's no right or wrong. Well, what does that look like? I remember back as a kid, there was the commercials for retirement, like Freedom 55, right? You know, it's not so much these days. It's more like Freedom 79. But I think what that advertisement, aside from trying to sell you insurance, was getting as, what do you want your life to look like? And that's a valid question. Everything I do now, all my decisions are based on what I want my life to look like 5 and 10 years down the road and when I retire. So that's a question you can reflect on as you leave here today, which is also your third point in your toolbox. The third point that really should be the one if you have trouble remembering it, should be visible to you in some way, whether it's writing it out or a picture or something, but it needs to be in your consciousness all the time. The fourth step here is you got to learn how to analyze your time. All right, this is where the adjustments come in. You create a little spreadsheet. For those of us that love spreadsheets, you'll love this exercise. If you hate spreadsheets, I'm sorry. But essentially, you put down your activity, how many hours you spend, and then translate that into a percentage of your week. Okay? But take a second, flip your sheet over or whatever, and that's what you got to do. Start thinking about all the different things you do. Those are some of the things I do. Change diapers, eat, work, whatever. But think about all the different sort of categories in your life. There might be other ones that aren't up there. And take a second, create that chart. So once you get your percentages, draw a little circle, and probably with the aid of a protractor or realistically some sort of computer program. Those who remember the protractor. Okay, chart. Just start create a pie chart with your percentages. See what it looks like. Okay. Most importantly, chart it again between what you think your current one is and what the desired is. That's where the adjustments come in. Because I think once you graph it visually, and if you don't need the chart, you can just look at the percentages, but you need to make some sort of adjustment to where you're going with your life and how you want it to look. 2 circles could change your life. All you do is making the cut. That is your 4th and final toolkit tool. Shameless hashtag. So I started this talking about how my colleagues laughed at my study of work-life balance, or just thought it was not at my study, but they thought that work-life balance in a profession was funny. And I didn't think about that, because when I look at it, we're not just talking about people working a little bit too much. We're talking about people's lives, right? We're talking about people getting stressed out. We're talking about people getting sick, right? We're talking about companies losing great talent. We know that when you work at a university, in our case, losing great talent means that students don't get the services they deserve. They don't get the knowledge they deserve. And if you're talking about a company, the next time you're at a company, it's like you're getting bad service, think about that maybe there's someone that could have been there that was forced out through a bad culture. So to me, it's not funny. And like I said, ultimately you have to be the ones that advocate for yourself and get rid of the jokes, because it's too easy to just accept that's just the way it is in this culture. That's just the way it is. That's the way it is. This was interesting. This week, this was the headline I got in a Huffington Post article. I was talking about depression and suicide amongst student affairs administrators because of a lot of these issues. Now, I'm not going to be a sensationalist and be like, oh my God, it leads to like suicide, but that's real. And so we need to think about that. More importantly, I ask you the question, what life do you want to live? What does it look like? For me, my ideal life involves a lot of flexibility, a lot of travel when I want to, and a lot of ways to build in pockets of free time, because that is the most important thing in my life. That is why I work extra hours on Tuesdays and Thursdays so I don't have to come into the office as much. That's why I work from home. I work on weekends. That's why I travel when I can, because it is important to me to have as much time with my child and my family as possible. And that my life down the road includes having time for them and having flexibility. So what's your flexibility? What's your life going to look like? And how are you going to advocate for it? Because if you don't advocate for it, nobody else will. If you don't advocate for it, a bad situation could get worse. And more importantly, you're going to lose out on the joy of life. Have a great rest of conference.